Addiction is the epidemic of our generation. Every 4 minutes, people are overdosing in the U.S. Drugs and alcohol are tearing our families apart. The only way to combat addiction is through proper treatment and customized care. As people are slipping into the grips of addiction, nationwide Banyan Treatment Center facilities stand as the leader in providing growth through recovery. Addiction does not discriminate. Do not let yourself or someone you know become another devastating statistic. Call now, 855-6-BANYAN.
How is everyone? I just want to say thank you. This is such a wonderful program, and I've been so inspired by what everybody had to say. And, you know, for me, recovery is really, at this point, life, right? It's living my life every day, choosing not to use. July 18th, I will have 16 and a half years clean from heroin addiction. So needless to say, I didn't show up looking like this when I first got clean, okay? So the one thing that I really wanted to talk about tonight, I'm a huge advocate for many of the things that people have been speaking about tonight, but since we only get a short amount of time to talk, I really wanted to talk a lot about addiction and creativity. For me, I can say acting saved my life. And if you're in recovery, I challenge you to find something that inspires you, excites you, and gives you a passion to live your life for and with. Some have found it in the recovery community, but there's also other things out there that you can explore, that you can find. You know, lost dreams awaken, new possibilities arise. I ran with that. And I really started looking for something that I could find meaning and attach a meaning and a positive story to everything that I had been through. So for me, having an opportunity to be in this play and treatment, it was the last thing I wanted to do. My counselor forced me to audition for this thing. I was like, I don't want to be in a treatment play, right? So, but I did this play, and I found a mentor, and he really encouraged me to kind of move in that direction. And when I first got clean, I started writing a lot. I journaled. I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I found that very healing. And what I started to see in those pages was that I was writing my story about how I started using. And I wrote it in many different forms and many different styles, to free form with no punctuation, to almost a play or a script or a structured story. You know, it just seemed like I kept writing the same story over and over again. But the catch was that I could never end it. And I always stopped at the same moment. And it was the moment that I got into treatment was always where the story stopped. And that's when I realized, I kind of had this aha moment, is that my story is never going to end, because recovery is an ongoing process. There is no end, graduation, national holiday, just because you arrived, right? And so I kind of had to change my thinking around that. And so with always not knowing how this story ended, I kind of always pushed it to the side. And I found myself in an acting class, and I was inspired by a teacher, right? When you get clean, you start kind of seeing little signs or cueing into little things that you hear that might not make sense, but you follow it anyway. And my teacher looked out at the class that night and said to all of us, "You all have a story to tell. Go out there and tell it. Stop waiting for the phone to ring. Stop waiting for it to be cast in that perfect role, but go out there and tell your story, because you all have one." So I left class that night, and I'm like, yeah, of course I have a story. Like, I was doing heroin. That's a huge story. You know, so much happened during that time. And I mulled it over on the train ride home of how I could create something out of that. And the next day I took a nap, and I woke up, and I realized, wow, I have the story. And I just started writing, put the pen down, and I realized the story that I wrote was not the story about my active addiction, which I had been writing for years, about 10 years at this point, on and off. But it was the story of my first year clean and how difficult that was. Because for me, it was the first time I didn't have a drug or a drink to hide behind, right? And I had to face everything. Everything in that moment of life and the mess that I had created while I was using. And I didn't have any place to hide. I felt like a turtle without a shell. And I realized, wow, that's the story that I want to tell, because nobody's telling that story. We can rent a movie and see how to shoot a bag of dope, smoke a crack pipe, roll a joint, whatever it is you want to do, right? Everybody's talking about the problem. Turn on the news, it's the problem, it's the epidemic. But what about the solution? What about recovery? What about that conversation? What is that? And so I made this film called Grace to start a conversation. And my intention was to try to bring addicts, people using or in recovery, and the non-addicts, and like, how can we all come together as a community and have a conversation to understand one another? Because I know when I first got clean, I felt so misunderstood. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. And my family, for as supportive as they were and for as loving as they were, they didn't know how to communicate with me. They didn't know what to say. So there was a lot of silence and a lot of awkwardness. And what I found is the more that we can come together and have events like this, to just be able to talk and share ideas and solutions, the more it becomes a part of our world, a part of our life, right? And it starts to remove some of that stigma that's around it and associated with it. Because the more comfortable we become talking about it, then it's not a big deal if you do have a problem and you want to get help and you want to go to treatment. Because you don't have the guilt and the shame surrounding it to ask for the help when you need it. Because the help is there if you ask. But I know for myself, I was so busy keeping up appearances and like everything was okay. I felt so ashamed and guilty that I didn't want to ask for help because I didn't want you to really know what was going on. So for me, finding acting and being in that first acting class, I found more therapeutic than my caseworker, than my social worker, than my therapist, because for me, it was a moment where I could see how all that pain, all that anger, all that resentment, jealousy, hurt, sadness, I could put that into a character, into a role, and do a scene for class and really move people. And I was like, oh, wow. You mean I had the connection, and I made the connection that, wow, I can do something positive with all of that stuff? That's really cool. And so I challenge you to find what that is for you. I'm a huge advocate of arts and education because I feel that not until I got into treatment were we doing groups and sessions of identifying feelings and finding ways to channel them in an appropriate way type of thing. But it's like, if we can give our children in schools arts programs, arts and education, a child can find that if he's angry, he can bang on a drum. He can jam out on an electric guitar. He can pick up a paintbrush and throw some paint on a piece of paper and, get that out there and see that those feelings are all just about being human. We are human beings, not human doers. We're meant to feel. But are we going to move through those feelings, or are we going to stuff them with something outside of ourselves, right? Are we going to go for that martini after work because we had a really stressful day? Or are we going to go for that bag of dope when we wake up in the morning because I can't deal with today? Or are we going to go for that pint of Haagen-Dazs ice cream because we just broke up in our relationship and we don't want to deal with that? I mean, it's all the same thing, right? It's because we don't want to feel. We want to stuff. We want that smoke. We want that sex. We want to gamble. We want to shop. Right? We live in a consumer society that wants us to buy to get outside of ourselves, because if we don't have all of these things, then we're not a part of, right? And if we don't feel like a part of, then we don't want to feel that. So find what it is for you, and I'm also talking to people in this room that maybe aren't addicts, because we all have feelings, and yeah, sometimes it sucks to feel certain things. But in those moments is where we grow and where we change, right? Because let me tell you, I've been in a fetal position many times through the years. But it's in those moments of making the choice, because I know I have a choice. Being clean, I have a choice. If I'm high, I have no choice. So it's like I have a choice. What am I going to do in this moment? And I found, reaching out to others and talking with other people has also been huge. And, creating this film, which I had the opportunity to do, I was really able to share with a lot of people and to have these conversations with people. And so I want to applaud all of you for being here tonight, because this is really your night, because you showed up to be a part of the solution. I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people, and people come to me kind of like looking for an answer. I don't necessarily have an answer. I have my experience, but you being here is the answer. So I want to say thank you.